baby. Hey guys, it's been quite a while since I posted. I meant to post more, and I know I alluded to some of the reasons for my absence in the swatching video, but to be honest, I don't really want to get into it too much right now. With everything going on, my mental health hasn't been at its best, and my physical health has declined quite a bit. It's extremely personal. It's hard making excuses for not filming and posting, and I feel like I could be doing more, but I have to keep in mind that I'm allowed to rest and that I need to know and respect not only my boundaries but my personal limits and put my health first over making content. That being said, I'm so grateful to you guys for sticking around. Even when there's this huge long dry spell, I almost never lose subscribers. You guys have been so understanding, so supportive. The few subscribers that have reached out to me on other platforms, in Discord channels, on Twitter, on Instagram, you guys have been so amazing. I'm trying to do the best I can for you guys, but it can be really hard, especially with all the current events going on. They're really, really overwhelming. They're difficult to talk to, difficult to process. It feels like everything is happening all at once. And there's people I care about who are in danger and are going to be even more in danger. I'm over here trying to pour my heart out to you guys, and my cat's scratching his toy in the background. I'm sorry if that's distracting. Okay, I think he's done now. Sorry. Going back to what I was saying, it's really hard to focus on being this positive, creative person when so many people in the world and so many people I personally know are hurting in such profound ways. So in the description below, you're going to find links. There's going to be different places that you can donate, that you can find more information about current events, that you can figure out how to help in the ways that you can. I've got things, I've got the fundraiser for George Floyd's family, I've got bail funds for protesters, and I've got COVID relief. I did some research to make sure that I was picking links out for reputable, transparent, and real donations, charities that take donations. I'm gonna ask as politely as I can that my comment section be kept free of any derisive or nasty comments about these situations, any hateful or hurtful opinions. They will be deleted. I want this channel to be a place that you can calm down, that you can find peace, that you can just breathe when you're feeling raw, and know that this is a safe place for you to be. To bring us back to the video, what you're seeing on screen now are kind of sort of real-time swatches. The act of me laying the paint and pigment down on the paper is in real time, but I've sped up the drying time so that you can see the color shifts in the different paints. I've put captions with the brand names, the color names, and the pigment information in the bottom right of the screen, and I'll make sure that the description has a full list of the paints as well. I spent a good portion of the time I was away working on this palette and deciding what I did and didn't want in it. It was a breath of relief and a way for me to take a rest and recuperate, to just sit down and research pigments, research brands, research the light fastness of different brands and different hues and different pigments. I have entire sketchbooks filled with just swatches and color mixes and me hemming and hawing between two very similar colors and how often I might reach for them and their viability to a professional palette. If you guys are interested in seeing it, I'm entirely willing to make a more in-depth video about the process I went through to come to these selections and about the actual professional palette I've put together. I'll give you guys a really quick overview of what the palette is, what it's like, what I put into it, but I'm definitely not going to go super in-depth here. The palette I bought, I will link below, and in the dedicated video to it, I will talk about the pros and cons of the palette I bought, because there are quite a few that could change your opinion on it either way. There's wells on the outside of it, and the palette's actually designed to have a segment for half pans in the middle. So what I did was I watched a few people's different videos about how they organize their professional palettes, and I decided that what would work best for me is that the long section in the middle, where it's going to be the closest to my hand and to my paper while I'm mixing my pigments. There he goes again. But the section that was going to be closest to me, to the paper and the pigments that I would be reaching for the most often, is where I was going to put my split primaries. I went with the red, yellow, and blue instead of cyan and magenta and all of that, because I personally prefer more neutral, earthy mixes inside my paintings to have more of like an old masters Renaissance feel to the color and the atmosphere of it. I'm not going to really get into the argument of primary colors here. I personally lean towards the red, blue, and yellow that I was taught, that I find gives me the atmosphere and color theory that I need, but there is definitely pros and cons to both of them, and vibrancy is one of the biggest things that I give up with the color mixes I do. I'm more likely to get really nice neutrals, really earthy colors, really like really nice neutralized mixes instead of like neon bright punchy colors, which is why I opted for this palette, because I've got that section that I can have the half pans with other mixing colors if I need that vibrancy. The left side of the palette I kept to my quote-unquote fun colors, which are colors that I'm putting into the palette that I know I'm going to use often. They inspire me, but they aren't really colors that are there for mixing. They aren't really going to be ones that I'm going to be throwing at every single painting I do, instead of the split primaries where I know I'm going to be using them pretty much every time I paint. And then on the far right, I have my skin tone colors and my favorite earthy colors. I didn't really put much thought as to the left or right when I was doing it. I just kind of did it. So I tried to keep almost all of the paints to single pigment paints. So my color mixing isn't going to be muddy. It's going to be very clean, very vibrant, very transparent with most of the pigments that I picked. I do have a few opaque pigments, but not too many, and the opacity of the pigments isn't going to really affect the uses I have for them. There is a controversial choice in the palette that I will speak on in this video, and I'll elaborate more in the dedicated video later. If you know your paints and your pigments, I'm sure you saw that pop up on the screen and had a little mini heart attack knowing that this is a professional palette. Alizarin Crimson is an extremely fugitive color. It goes brown, it fades, it doesn't hold to its true color like at all. But it's often a color that people will shy away from because of that, but I really like the way that it mixes. I like the way that it moves in water. It was one of the first Daniel Smith colors that I ever actually bought for myself, and I kind of fell in love with it, and I've had that love relationship with it for a pretty long time now. The reason it's in my palette is not only because I love it, but almost all of the paintings that you're going to be seeing on this channel where I'm using this palette are actually in sketchbooks, which don't get exposed to the light very often, and I'm not selling them to clients. I scan them with a really high-res scanner, and then I make prints of them. I almost never sell the originals for what's in my sketchbook. So I don't mind if it becomes gross looking in the future, if it starts shifting or getting brown, because my sketchbooks to me aren't display pieces. They are tools to learn and to grow, and the best way to learn is to just do it. For the loose originals that you see me selling and will occasionally be painting on this channel, I have a half pan of permanent Alizarin Crimson on my palette, so I will just omit the fugitive version of it when doing things I plan to sell. I've found that it does mix a little differently, and I find that it stains more than the non-permanent version of it. So it doesn't quite move in the way that I exactly want, and it's the slightest difference. But it was one of those hard decisions I had to make for my own creativity and my own process. I was really indecisive in what I wanted for my blues and my earth tones, so I'm really, really, really thankful for that section in the middle, because I have so many blues in that section. I think when I last counted, I have 4 other blues in that section besides the 2 split primaries that are in my main palette. There's also like handmade ones in there too. I've got a handmade blue in there as well. I will definitely, I think it's kind of a definite at this point that I need to make that video and really discuss my palettes with you guys, and just kind of like lay out what I actually have in that palette, because there's a lot of paints. I purposely designed the piece that you're seeing in this video to stick to only the outer ring, the wells of paints that I'm calling my main palette. I'm almost treating it like the half pans in the center of this palette are an entirely separate palette. I tried very hard to keep it in frame for the majority of the wide shots so that you could see which colors I was picking and mixing together and stuff, but I'm not sure how effective that was. So the character you're going to see that I'm painting is a character from my novel Winter Thrall. That I post a lot more about that on my Patreon than I've ever talked about here on the channel, but I am writing a novel. Go me. I'm really hoping to bring my characters from that world into my art more often, because I feel like I've been kind of embarrassed about the fact that I'm writing. I think a large part of that has been that I was so focused on commissions and just getting money. Anytime I made art, it had to be getting money. And I'm really trying to get myself into the mindset that I'm allowed to be creative for selfish reasons, that I'm allowed to personally make art that I enjoy, even if I know it's not going to be something the mainstream public is going to consume. The character, his name is Charles. He's really important to me. He's not the main character, but he's one of the love interests. He's very aristocratic, very feminine, a lot of a bitch. But he's very soft, very caring. A lot of the bitchiness that is in the story is him not knowing how to express his worry, his concern, his care for the people around him. He really becomes a figure of strength and peace for the main character, Clara, and I wanted to show him in that aspect because I think a lot of people are going to read the book and come away with the whole, oh, he's just a bitchy, sassy, bisexual man. He's got a husband and he's got an opinion, he's throwing shade. But there's a lot more to him, and I really wanted to show those aspects of him that I was really keeping in mind when I created him. This is gonna be the cheesiest way to bring this up, but having a goal, having an emotion with what you want to convey, it really comes down to understanding color theory. I wouldn't call myself a master at it. I'm still learning. I'm still hammering out as many classes as I can get my little grubby poor hands on. I wanted to bring that warmth out in him. He's got this gorgeous copper hair. He's very pale, so you can see all of the blushes in his skin tone. So to show that off and to really show him being that strong, peaceful, warm, and inviting and caring person that he does show himself to be, I used Quinacridone Gold across the entire piece. I just flat out just stained the paper. I lifted it across his face and the skin areas in order to keep that stain there, but really lift it so that the highlights would look almost white when the painting was done, but would still have that really warm, inviting glow to it. I kind of focused on building the entire figure that way, even the shawl. I put down warm washes as a base, and every layer that I did got a little cooler so that everything really tied in, and even the shadows had that warmth, that underlying rich warmth to them. At the end, I finished the painting by refining the edges and the color shifts with color pencils to deepen those shadows, really get them nice and crisp. I did cut out most of the footage of me using my color pencils just because it wasn't really that interesting when I sped it up. It was a lot of me switching between 2 or 3 pencils and just doing like a little dab of color here or there. I run on instinct when I paint, so for this particular one I can't really describe my exact thoughts for every step I did. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let the music play and let you guys just chill out, watch the rest of the painting, listen to some great royalty-free music, and I guess I'll see you next week. I think it'll be next week. I already have the footage for the video, so all I have to do is, voice over it. So next week, I'll make that promise to you guys. Thank you. If you like the video, throw me a like, subscribe. It'd really be awesome. I finally got over 100 subscribers, so, and yeah, I will see you next time. Bye.